let's see what we got. Let's see what we got. Dude, this is so freaking fun. I cannot wait for you guys to try this. Let's go. Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is it. This is the build that all of you have been waiting for and asking for. I had so many of you guys in my comments on the YouTube short that I put out about 4 or 5 weeks ago that had this build showcased in it, but I didn't go in depth and I didn't have any stats accompanied with that build. So this long form video is going to have all of the things that you need, from weapons, talismans, flasks, armor. I'm going to go through every little thing in this video so you guys can see exactly what you need to do to have a blast with Scarlet Rot in Elden Ring here with this particular build. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it because I don't want to waste anybody's time. The first thing we're going to do is the weapons. You're going to be starting out with the Heavy Rotten Great Axe at plus 25. Now, I was a little bit skeptical about this particular weapon because it's a colossal weapon and the swing speed was always a little bit too slow for me. But after it just got recently buffed, this is a very viable option in this game and it is so fun to use. I have accompanied this weapon with Horalu's Earthshaker, which we're going to get into in just a minute, but it just makes the weapon really fun to use, really effective, and overall, with the Scarlet Rot buildup that it's going to place on enemies, it's going to be great. So with that being said, the Scarlet Rot buildup is going to be at 65. It is going to take a little bit of time to get that Scarlet Rot built up on your enemies, but once you do, you can literally just run away from them and it will slowly tick down and kill them without you swinging one more time. It is absolutely phenomenal. I enjoy the Scarlet Rot buildup. I think overall it's not nearly as effective as a blood build or anything along those lines, but it is a lot of fun to use, especially against endgame bosses that have a big health pool. With its strength scaling at B, this weapon is overall a well-rounded weapon. The swing pattern is great, it hits really, really hard, and it has a physical damage of 368 plus 425, which overall is a really solid choice if you're going to be using a strength weapon for a build such as this. The second option you have to use gets a little bit more interesting. So I'm also using the Blood Rotten Battle Hammer. Now, let me explain exactly what this means because I had somebody in my comments of that YouTube short recommend this to me, and if I can find you, I'll tag you in the comments because this was really awesome and I was super excited to try this out. So I took the Rotten Battle Hammer and I made it a blood affinity, so it lowers the strength down from an A to a B, but I also put Wild Strikes on it, so you can get that blood loss and Scarlet Rot build up really, really, really fast as you swing back and forth. Typically, Battle Hammers don't have a great moveset, but with this Ash of War, the blood loss build up, and the Scarlet Rot build up, it absolutely wrecks, and it's super, super fun. It has a physical damage of 262 plus 437, so great for a Battle Hammer. Really enjoy this one. I would definitely recommend you guys use this, especially with this particular setup, because it is just going to make your gameplay really fun, really easy, and it's going to be absolutely phenomenal for you. Moving down to our seal, we're going to be using Incantations with this build, so we have a Strength, Faith, and Arcane build that's going to be happening here with this, so we're going to be using the Dragon Communion Seal at plus 10. This has an Arcane scaling of S and a Faith scaling of B, and it's going to boost our Dragon Communion Incantations. We are using a few Roars and Dragon Incantations in this build, so this is going to boost those effectively, and it's going to be absolutely great for what we need in this build. A few things to take note of with this particular Dragon Communion Seal is that the incantation scaling is going to be 369, and the boost that it gives you to your Dragon Communion Incantations is going to be a 15% damage boost, so definitely worth having on, especially if you're using some of these Dragon Incantations, because not only are they powerful on their own, accompanied with the Dragon Communion Seal, they just get that much better. Next up, let's go right into Talismans, guys. The first talisman we're going to be using is the Kindred of Rot's Exaltation. This is going to allow anytime there's poisoning or rot in the vicinity, your attack power to be increased. So considering you are constantly going to have rot in the vicinity, your attack power is always going to be increased and it's going to work really well for you. Your attack power is going to be boosted by 20% for 20 seconds anytime that there is Scarlet Rot or poison in the vicinity of you on the battlefield. So definitely a really good talisman for you to use with this particular build. Now, our number 2 talisman is going to be the Erd Tree Favor at plus 2. This is going to raise your maximum HP, stamina, and equip load. The reason that I'm using this one is because I'm in new game plus 6 at this point, so I need all the health, stamina, and equip load that I can possibly get. So this just helps me out overall in where I currently am in the game. Speaking of that, I will have a breakdown at level 50, 100, and 150 for those people that want to play at meta level at the very end of the video, so stick around for that. The Erd Tree Favor is going to boost all of your stats by 4% of your HP, 20% of your stamina, and it's going to give you plus 8% of your equip load. So this is definitely going to help you out in all attributes. Great quality of life talisman. Definitely would pick this one up. Now moving on to our number 3 talisman. This talisman is really only going to pair with one attribute of this build, and that is going to be Horalu's Earthshaker that we have on the Rotten Great Axe. Horalu's Earthshaker is an incredibly powerful Ash of War that smashes the ground around you not once, but twice, and it sends enemies flying. It does a lot of damage, and this is only going to enhance enhance that damage that we're going to be doing with that particular Ash of War. So the Roar Medallion is going to enhance your roars and breath attacks, which, side note, it actually does not enhance your dragon incantation breath attacks, and I found that out the hard way when I said it did in that YouTube short. So it doesn't enhance your breath attacks for Dragon Communion, but what it does do is it enhances your roar attacks, and the Horluth Earthshaker is considered a roar attack. Now the Roar Medallion is going to give you a 15% damage boost on roar, cry, or shriek attacks, and that is exactly why we are pairing it with the Heavy Rotten Great Axe with the Horluth Earthshaker on it. It does an incredible amount of damage, and I absolutely love it. It is one of my favorite Ash of Wars in this game, and overall it goes really well with the build and how we're going to play with it. And moving on to our fourth and final talisman, this talisman is not a stranger to my channel. I have it on the majority of my builds because, let's be honest, I get hit a lot in Elden Ring and it is what it is. We are going to be using the Dragon Crest Great Shield talisman, and this is going to normally boost your physical damage negation. There are 3 separate tiers of this talisman, but this particular talisman is going to decrease the damage that you take by 20%. So it's definitely a fantastic quality of life talisman to use, especially when you pair it up next to the Erdtree's Favor. You're going to have more HP, you're going to take less damage. Overall, it works out really, really well, and I think these talismans go great with this build. Now let's move into our Flask of Wondrous Physics. So you're going to be using the Stone Barbed Crack tier, which is going to temporarily make Stance Break easier. This is really key, especially because we're using a Colossal weapon. It's just going to make Stance Break on bosses and enemies a ton easier stacked on top of the Colossal weapon. And then the second part of the Flask that we're using is the Spite Cracked tier. This is going to temporarily boost charge attack power. So on top of the Roar Medallion and Horluth Earthshaker, we are also going to temporarily boost that charge attack power because those are charged attacks and they're going to hit even harder. Definitely a solid Flask to pair with this build. It makes it a lot of fun and you always feel like you're just crushing people. So moving on from our Flask, let's look at the armor that we're using for this build. Now, I'm going to have the Rotten Duelist Helm on, but I also understand that the Mushroom Crown is what you should be using for this particular build because it's going to give you a 10% damage boost that is stackable on our other attributes that we have for Scarlet Rot being in the vicinity. So that's ultimately what you should be using, but let's be honest, it looks so dumb. So I'm using the Rotten Duelist Helm because it looks absolutely phenomenal. This is going to drop from different duelists in the Consecrated Snowfield, so you can find them there, kill them, and get their armor that way. That is the exact way you can get both of the weapons as well. Moving on, we are using on our chest piece the Drake Knight armor, which can be found in the Halig Tree. We are also going to be using the Briar Gauntlets, and we're going to be using the Rotten Duelist Greaves. Briar Gauntlets can be found after you kill the Executioner in Altus Plateau from the Old Crone in Round Table Hold, and then the Rotten Duelist Greaves, like the helmet, can be found when killing the Rotten Duelist in the Consecrated Snowfields. So the last thing that we have on our list that we need to cover for this build is going to be your incantations. You are going to be using 5 different incantations with this build, 3 of which are damage spells and 2 of which are defensive / buff spells. So the first of which, Flame Grant Me Strength. This is going to give you a physical damage buff of 20% physical damage. Absolutely great spell to be using, especially because we're going to be doing a lot of physical damage with our weapons. Having that 20% buff on it is going to serve you very well in the long run, especially playing into the in-game content of this build. Moving on to our second incantation that we have in this build, we're going to be using Golden Vow. Now, Golden Vow is going to be another great defensive buff spell for you. It's going to increase your damage by 15% and 7.5% in PvP. This is also going to give all damage negation at plus 10%, so that's going to stack with our other talismans that we're using to get the damage negation, and this also stacks with Flame Grant Me Strength. So overall, you're getting a plus 35% damage boost when you use Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength at the exact same time. This is almost a must, especially with New Game Plus builds. You're going to be doing a lot more damage if you use both of these. Moving on to our first offensive spell, this is our opener. It's Scarlet Aeonia. Scarlet Aeonia is a very interesting spell because it hits incredibly hard and it hits twice. There's impact damage, and there's also going to be the Scarlet Rot damage, which is considered super rot. It's going to tick for longer and tick for more damage than a regular Scarlet Rot spell would. You are going to get your damage to tick for 90 seconds. So if you hit a boss with this and then just run away from the boss, you can kill that boss because in a minute and a half, that boss will be dead because of the amount of damage that Scarlet Aeonia is going to do to that NPC. It's going to be almost broken. So definitely a fun incantation to use. You get this from Millennia when you beat her and you use her Remembrance at the Old Crone. So definitely a fun spell to check out. Moving on to our second damage spell, we're using XX Decay. XX Decay is not only going to give you rot damage over time, but it's also going to give you 18% more physical damage than Rotten Breath currently would. So So out of the two, Rotten Breath and XX Decay, this one overall is better. It does take a little bit more FP. It does have a little bit more of a requirement on it when it comes to the Faith, but if you don't have this yet, Rotten Breath is another viable option you can use. This is a great spell to spread Scarlet Rot all over the battlefield, inflicting multiple targets with Scarlet Rot. It hits for a decent amount of damage as well, and I really like how it feels and how it looks when we're fighting with this build. And finally, the last incantation that we are using is going to be Grail's Roar. Grail's Roar is going to cause your enemies to attack you for 20% less damage, but you are going to deal 10% damage against them for 60 seconds. Not only is this a great debuff, especially in mid-end game, but it also does a lot of damage when you first roar with it. It does take a little bit to get going, like most breath and roar attacks do, but once you get it out, it's going to devastate the battlefield and you're going to have a ton of fun with it. And the very last thing I want to show you guys real quick is just the stats that I currently have on my character, and I'll break down the stats that you can have at level 50, 100, and 150 for those people who want to play at that level. So I'm currently level 290. I do understand that I'm over leveled, but I have Vigor at 70, Mind at 30, Endurance at 45, Strength at 67, Dexterity at 10, Intelligence at 7, Faith at 75, and Arcane at 65. Now, if you want to see the stats, you can use it 50, 100, and 150. They should be on the screen right now. And there you have it, guys. That's the Scarlet Rot build that I've been working on for a while. I hope you guys enjoyed. Leave down in the comments whether or not you would change anything on the build, some things that you would do to tweak it, any of that kind of stuff, different weapons you would use. I would love to start a conversation with you guys. Love to hear how you would make this build your own. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. It's been so fun to watch things grow so far, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Also, guys, if you're not subscribed to the channel, feel free to hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you can know when I'm making more Elden Ring content. I make it every Monday, so until next time, guys, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.